making that for you. Hey you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited about today's video because I finally got to make something that I've been wanting to make for a really long time for my ferrets. So I am not going to talk long. I just want to mention a couple of things. First is, if you are not subscribed to my channel and you like this video, please subscribe and please click that like button. It really helps my channel out. It also really helps me know that you guys like the content that I'm creating. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And the other thing that I want to mention is, in the video, about midway through, one of my pieces kind of changed, and you'll see it, and I'm going to put a note across the screen, but I want to bring it to your attention now before we start, so that you are aware of it and you don't make the same mistake I did. But anyway, when you go to make this and you go to cut your circles, if you cut your circles in a pattern piece and a solid piece, they're not going to line up like this. So what I recommend is that you either cut it in the solid or you cut two circles in the pattern. But if you cut it in one of each, you're going to end up having to put those circles next to each other. And I don't know that that's really what you want to do. If you want your circles next to each other, cut them in the same fabric, and it's no big deal. But if you notice a switch midway through the video, what happened was, in my tired mind, I cut them in one of each, and when I went to line it up, it didn't do what I wanted, so I had to recut the circle. Anyway, just wanted to bring that to your attention. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's just do it. So for this project, you're gonna need some pins or clips, a pen, something to write with, some scissors, a ruler, your sewing machine. I have some cotton fleece, or this is actually cotton flannel, I'm sorry, and some fleece. And you can make this kind of whatever size you want, but I would recommend you at least make it, I'm gonna say 20 by 20, just so you can do these steps. Mine's gonna be closer to probably 24 by 30-ish. Okay, so what you wanna do first is, I'm gonna cut the back of my, mat. I'm gonna cut that first and set it aside till the end. So I'm just gonna lay out my fleece like this. Now, what I wanna say is, with pattern fleece, make sure that when you cut this, you cut it so that it's all going in the same direction, so that when you go to place this together later on, your design isn't kind of backwards and forwards and all over the place. So just kind of pay attention to how you're cutting it, so that you cut it where it makes sense, it all flows. Okay, so now I have cut out 2 squares of my sushi, or my pattern piece. I'll put the measurements in the description and across the screen. Basically, I'm making the square, but I'm doing it in a patchwork. And then I've cut 2 solid colors that match my pattern design in the same size, so that we can create that square the same size as our base, which is 24 by 27. So what you want to do now is, for each piece of cotton that you have, you want to have a piece of green. And you want to put them right sides together. So put the good side of the cotton facing the good side of the fleece. And I'm going to kind of cheat here. I'm just going to cut around these because we're going to stitch these all together in the end, and it's going to be fine. So I'm just going to go like this. And I'm going to pin these in place, or clip them once I get these cut, and then we'll move on to the next step. And I'll explain what we're doing. We're basically creating a kind of like a quilt for the front. And then once we get done with that, we'll put the whole thing together. Okay, so now you should have a pattern piece right sides together with a piece of your solid color fleece. You should have a solid color piece of flannel right side together with a piece of fleece. You should have an additional pattern piece and fleece piece not pinned or clipped together, set aside, and an additional solid color flannel and fleece piece together but not clipped and set aside. Now we're going to put circles on these. I'm going to use this because it's a great shape and it's the perfect size. I'm going to try to center it. If it's not, it's okay if it's not 100% perfect, because this size is going to change. We overcut this to allow for seam allowance, so that when we stitch it all together to create one piece, we made sure to account for our seams. So we're going to find our kind of center to the best of our ability, and we're going to just draw a circle or a square. You can honestly draw whatever shape you want to. It does not have to be a circle. Whatever shape you can sew around. You're going to want to go over to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch all the way around these circles. Go really slow if you're not used to doing these. Line your needle up with the line that you drew and just go slow and go all the way around. Okay, so now you've sewn this circle on both of these, and what you got to do is unclip it. All right, and then you're going to cut the circle out. Don't cut your thread lines though. Don't cut your stitch lines. Just cut a hole in the center and then cut as close to the line, the thread, your stitch line as possible. Don't cut the stitch line though. And then once you've cut the hole, you're going to take your flannel piece and you're going to flip it so that now the wrong sides are facing each other, and it'll look something like this. And then just kind of smooth this out some. And what you're going to want to do is, so here's what I do, and if you don't have clips, you can just do this with your hand when you go around with the machine. But I kind of clip it so that my fleece stays in place and it just looks pretty, but you don't have, this is completely optional. You can hold this. I'm going to top stitch around this circle. Now, some people struggle with this and have a hard time. My needle on my Bernina machine moves, so I can move the needle over and create a really pretty good top stitch around this, just to hold this in place. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with my pattern piece. Okay, so on my Bernina, I can move my needle over. So I moved it over to the left, and then if you come down here, you'll see that my needle is moved over. A lot of machines probably do this. If they don't, then you kind of have to eyeball it if you choose to do this step. You don't have to do this, but it will help keep this in place long term. What I'm going to do now is just go all the way around this circle and put my pressure foot edge along the inside of the circle. You're going to have to kind of force this. It's not going to want to do this naturally. So I'm doing this one-handed, and basically you're going to do that all the way around. And I don't know if I'll be able to film the entire thing and be able to make this work at the same time, but we're going to try. Okay, so now what you should have, and you'll see where I had to redo my reds, and I put a note at the front of the video, basically sewing lesson of the day: don't sew tired, you make rookie mistakes. You should really be putting holes in the fabrics that are the same, whether that's your pattern or your solid. So just take that into consideration. Moving on. So next you had your you should have had the two extra pieces that were right sides together. You want to flip those over so that now they are facing where the wrong sides are together. So the right side should be facing up the pattern piece, and the right side of the fleece should be facing up on the other side. What I've done is I have added crinkle paper to the center of my solid piece, and I'm going to add crinkle paper to this one. And really all I did was I just put them so the wrong sides were facing together. I took a piece of crinkle paper, I stuck it in between it, like so. I got some clips and I just clipped down the edges. Now remember, with crinkle paper, you want the paper to be a little bit bigger than the fabric you're working with because you want it to crinkle. And so you want to cut your crinkle paper up. If you choose to use this as a step, is optional. You would want your crinkle paper to be about a ½ inch bigger or an inch bigger all the way around your project. And then you want to line up the edges so it bubbles in the center. I'm going to put a link above me to a video that goes over how to use crinkle paper. And basically that is what I'm doing here. So here's what we're gonna do now. We need to create the top piece. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna put your 4 pieces, you're gonna lay them out however you want to do them. It's up to you. So I'm gonna have mine like this, and we need to connect them. So what I would do, or what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna connect the sides together first. So I'm gonna take this piece and I'm gonna flip it right sides together to the piece next to it. I'm gonna clip it in place. I'm gonna go over to the sewing machine and I'm gonna stitch straight down here. And then I'm gonna do the same thing to this piece. Okay, so now that you've stitched up the sides, you should be able to open it, and these pieces should be attached like this. Now here's the important step. You want to line these seams up right here. So make sure your seams are lined up. Take whatever side you want, whichever one you want, flip them right sides together. Now make sure, I would line your seams up because when you're done, you're going to be able to see this, and you want it to look like the seams are lined up. So what I would do is I would line up those seams on top of each other, and I would make sure that you pin them down. Only clip one seam. So just, now you can, if you want, throw a pin in the center, just so you know that they're, because you're only going to stitch one side of this. You don't want to stitch 2 sides. So I'm just going to put a pin here to keep this in lined up the way I want. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to clip one edge. It doesn't really necessarily matter. You just want to clip the one long side together, just one. And you're going to sew down that edge. You're going to connect those pieces. Okay, so once you open it up, you should have something that looks like this. Now, remember that back piece you started off with? Go get that. You're going to want to take the cotton piece and you're going to lay it right sides down. Now, what I will tell you is make sure that your patterns are lined up the way that you, like they're all going the same direction, or at the very least, they're just not disheveled, but they shouldn't be because you would have cut them correctly. Now, you're going to put this right sides together. You're going to line these up. More than likely, this piece is going to be a little bit bigger now than your bottom piece, and that's okay because you've maybe lost a little bit from sewing. So we made this a little bit big. Now you're going to take your fleece and you're going to put it right sides facing you. So the right side should be facing up. And we'll go through the layers together to make sure we have it right before we do the rest of this. So you should have a layer of fleece facing you, right sides up, wrong side of a cotton piece, one solid piece. And then you should have the quilt front that you just made with the right side facing the cotton. And this should be the right side of the green fleece as well. So your cotton pieces should be facing together on the inside and your fleece pieces should be facing right side up on the outside. Now what you want to do, what I would do is flip this over because you're going to want to straighten it up. Anywhere that it's uneven or not right, you're going to want to trim it and clip all the way around this. Okay, so once you have trimmed it all up, you got it pretty even, you're going to want to clip it all the way around. Make sure that you clip all of the layers. We're going to probably do a 1/2 inch seam just to ensure that we catch all of the layers. And you can go ahead too and cut off like any of these seams if you want. Just make sure you don't cut your thread lines because this will be the inside and your ferrets or animals will have access to this. So you might want to trim these seams up the best that you can. Like I'm going to trim some of this. Alright, so now you've clipped it and you've evened it out. You're going to want to sew all the way around, but you're going to want to leave an opening about at least 5 inches, I would say. So pick the side you like the best that has most lined up. And actually, I'm going to go down here. I'm just going to take 2 pins. I'm going to mark it. Sorry about that. That's my Etsy business. So you're going to take 2 pins and you're going to just mark so that you know where to start and stop. And basically, you are going to stitch from this pin all the way around and stop at this pin. Make sure you back stitch here and back stitch here. Okay, so now that you've stitched all the way around and left your opening, I'm going to trim off any excess fabric, not too close to the edge because I just don't want it to ever rip, but we're just going to trim any excess fabric. And then I'm going to snip my corners just into like little triangles. Just snip the triangle corners off so that you can pop your corners out, make it cute. Alright, so once you've done that, you're going to want to go in between so that you are in between the 2 layers of flannel. And you're going to want to pull it right side facing out. So what you want to do next is you want to go around your edges and you want to just make sure that there's no holes, that everything is stitched. Okay, the ferrets are awake, I can hear them. You're going to want to take this and roll it in, let it roll in naturally. And you're going to clip it in place. You're going to make sure that you have your fleece is lined up with your fleece, that you are clipping everything together, your seams, and that you're clipping. You remember, you got to catch all 4 pieces when you do this as well, because you had all of the 4 pieces when you just stitched around. So you want to make sure you grab all the pieces. Okay, so now I've closed that seam up. I'm going to go around. I'm going to actually put a top stitch. This part is optional. You can hand stitch this shut and leave it and be done with it. I am going to probably top stitch the whole way around this. Just a very small top stitch. Nothing major. Not a big stitch. Not a pretty stitch. Just a straight stitch all the way around, just to kind of hold everything where I want it to be. Okay, you guys. So when it's done, it should look like this. And your ferret should be able to go through it. And the back will look like this. Just one solid. So I say we go give it to the ferrets.
What is it? There you go. Make it that for you.